My daughter banned me from her wedding for not being their social class. I exposed them online and destroyed her mother-in-law's million-dollar business. Now she came crying and disowned, begging for forgiveness. I'm 50 years old. I work selling houses. And like 3 months ago, something happened that basically destroyed my relationship with my daughter. Or well, almost destroyed it. Because now we're trying to fix things, but the truth is, it still hurts. And I need to tell this because I feel like if I don't get it out of my system, I'm going to explode. You know, it's one of those things that stays inside you spinning around and around. I guess I should start at the beginning. My husband died when my daughter Lauren was like 10 years old, maybe 11. I don't remember exactly, but she was still little. Cancer. One of those that advances fast, and by the time you realize it's too late. So I was left alone with her, without a penny to my name because the medical bills left us broke. Like literally, we sold the house and everything. I started working in real estate because it was the only thing I could do with my schedule. I needed to be available for Lauren, pick her up from school and stuff. Like that, you know what I mean? For 16 years, it was just the two of us against the world, basically. It wasn't easy, but we made it. I sent her to college. She graduated, got a good job, and I was so proud of her. So proud that sometimes I'd start crying, just thinking about everything we'd been through together. Lauren met Nicholas like 3 years ago, I think. He's a good guy, or that's what I thought at the time. He comes from a family with a lot of money. One of those families that have huge houses and brand new cars and vacations in Europe every summer. His parents have a public relations agency. I mean, they work with the image of big companies and politicians and all those people, and they're doing really well. Let's say really, really well. At first, everything was perfect. Nicholas was super attentive with Lauren. They'd visit me often. We'd have dinner together. We'd talk about everything. I lived in a small apartment but clean. Nothing fancy, but it was my home after. Years of struggling, and I never felt like Nicholas looked down on me or anything like that. I met his parents like twice only, at big family gatherings where there were so many people that we barely exchanged a few words. Like, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. The weather's nice. You know, those conversations about nothing. Like 6 months ago, Nicholas proposed to Lauren and I was happy. Literally, couldn't contain my excitement. My baby was getting married. She was going to have her own family. All that stuff that a mother dreams of for her daughter. We started planning the wedding. Well, they started planning because Nicholas's family was going to pay for everything. Don't get me wrong. I would have helped with whatever I could, but let's be honest, I don't have the money they have, not even close. Lauren would tell me about the plans, the venue they'd reserved at a 5-star hotel, the menu they were going to serve, the dress that was being designed by a famous designer, and I'd just nod and smile because I was happy for her, even though inside I felt that weird tingle of not really being involved in anything, you know? Like it was a show, and I was just the audience. The thing is, 3 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon, Lauren came to my apartment. I remember it perfectly because that day I'd closed an important sale and was in a good mood. I'd bought wine and cheese to celebrate. She arrived and had a face, like that face you make when you have to tell someone something horrible and don't know how to start. She sat on my couch. That old couch I bought at a garage sale like 8 years ago, and just sat there looking at her hands for what seemed like forever. I asked her what was wrong and she started crying. And when I say crying, I mean those silent tears that are worse than screaming because you know the person is destroyed inside. And then she told me. She told me that Nicholas's parents didn't want me at the wedding. Just like that, without beating around the bush after going in circles. That they thought I didn't fit in with their social circle, that my presence was going to be uncomfortable for their guests, and that basically I was an embarrassment to the family because I didn't have the same socioeconomic level as them. Lauren was crying and crying, saying that she had fought, that she had argued with them for weeks, but that Nicholas was on his parents' side, that he said it was his wedding and since his parents were paying for everything, then they had the right to decide who went and who didn't, and that Lauren had accepted that I wouldn't go to her wedding, to my daughter's wedding who I raised alone for 16 years, because she didn't want problems with her new family. I don't know how to explain what I felt in that moment. It was like someone had stuck a knife in my chest and was twisting it, like that physical pain you get when something destroys you emotionally. I just sat there unable to speak, unable to even process what I was hearing. My daughter, my only daughter, was telling me I wasn't good enough to be at the most important day of her life, that my JCPenney clothes and my Target shoes and my 2015 Honda were an embarrassment. That 16 years of sacrifice, of working 12 hours a day, of skipping meals so she could eat, of wearing the same clothes for years so she could have new clothes for school, all of that was worth nothing because I didn't have money in the bank. Lauren kept talking, trying to justify it, saying that she loved me, but that she had to think about her future, about her marriage, about not starting her life with Nicholas, with family problems. And I just looked at her thinking, who is this person? Because the girl I raised, the one who hugged me when she had nightmares, the one who told me I was her hero, that girl would have never done this to me. This was someone else. Someone that family had brainwashed into believing that money and status were more important than love and loyalty. When I could finally speak, I told her to leave. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told her very calmly to leave my apartment and not come back until she decided what was more important to her. She tried to hug me, but I pulled away. And the expression on her face when I did that is something I'll never forget. She left crying and I stayed there alone. On my old couch, in my small apartment, feeling like everything I'd worked for, everything I'd fought for, had been for nothing. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake all night, turning it over and over in my head, feeling humiliated and betrayed and furious. Because what hurt me most wasn't that Nicholas's family were classist snobs. I kind of expected that after meeting them, but that my daughter had accepted it, had chosen money and comfort over me. And then I got angry, like that anger that boils inside you and makes your hands shake, because I thought, you know what? If they think they can do this to me and get away with it, if they think they can step on people and nobody's going to say anything because they have money, they're very wrong. At 3 a.m, without thinking much about the consequences, because if I had thought about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. I opened my Facebook. I have like 1,000 friends there. Most of them clients and acquaintances from work, neighbors, people from the church I used to go to, those kinds of contacts. And I wrote a long post, very long, telling exactly what had happened. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I just told the truth. That I had raised my daughter alone after my husband died, that I had worked non-stop to give her a good life, that she was going to marry a boy from a wealthy family, and that family had forbidden me from going to the wedding because I wasn't of their social class, because my presence would be an embarrassment to them. I wrote that my own daughter had accepted this, that she had chosen their approval over her mother's love. And at the end of the post, I tagged Nicholas's parents, Nicholas himself. I looked up their profiles and tagged them all, including the family's public relations agency. I posted it and went to sleep. Or well, tried to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I had like 200 Facebook notifications, private messages, missed calls. The post had gone viral, like thousands of people sharing it, commenting, expressing their support and outrage. People I didn't even know were sharing my story, saying it was horrible what they'd done to me, that this family was a perfect example of everything that's wrong with rich people, that I'd done right in exposing them. Some comments were super emotional. Moms saying they'd cry if their daughters did something like that to them. Others were more aggressive. People insulting Nicholas's family and saying they deserve to have their business go bankrupt. Around 9 a.m, my phone started ringing. It was a number I didn't know, but I answered anyway. It was Nicholas's father, and he was desperate, literally begging me to delete the post. He told me this was ruining his business, that his clients were calling to cancel contracts, that his agency's reputation was on the floor, that please have compassion and delete it. And I, honestly, surprised myself because I told him very calmly that no, that the post was staying there, that they had made the decision to humiliate me, and now they had to live with the consequences. He started yelling, saying I didn't understand the damage I was causing, that this could ruin years of work, and I answered him, and what did you care about ruining my relationship with my daughter? Did you think about the damage you'd cause me? And I hung up on him. He called me like 20 more times that day, but I blocked his number. Blocked all his family's numbers. On the second day, Lauren called me. She was sobbing so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. She was begging me to delete the post, that I was destroying her life, that Nicholas was furious, that his family was blaming her for all of this, that please, Mom, please delete it. And I, with my heart in pieces because hearing your daughter cry like that is the worst thing in the world, told her no. I told her she had made her decision and I had made mine, that if I wasn't good enough to be at her wedding, then she would have to live with that choice. She cried harder and told me she hated me, that I was selfish, that I was ruining her happiness out of pride. And that hurt. I'm not going to lie. It hurt like nothing I'd ever felt before. But I didn't delete the post. What happened next was almost surreal. More stories started coming out. Former employees of Nicholas's parents' agency started commenting on my post, sharing their own experiences of how they'd been treated, how they'd been fired without just cause, how they'd been paid less than they deserved, how they'd been humiliated in front of clients. One girl told how Nicholas's dad had yelled at her until she cried because she'd worn a dress he considered too cheap for an important meeting. Another guy said he'd been fired because his old car made the company look bad when he parked in the building. Story after story of classism and mistreatment. And all of this was becoming a huge scandal. Like local media started covering it. Some big blogs shared the story. Basically, it became an example of how rich people think they can treat people. In the third week after my post, Nicholas called me. He sounded different, calmer than his father, but he was still trying to manipulate me. He told me he understood I was hurt, that my pain was valid, but that please think about Lauren, about how much she was suffering, that the wedding was postponed indefinitely because the scandal was too big, that his parents didn't want to have a celebration while all this controversy was active, and that Lauren was destroyed, that she wasn't eating well, wasn't sleeping, was crying every day. And I, hearing all this, felt that mother's pain that's like no other, because no matter how angry you are at your daughter, you don't want to see her suffer. But I didn't delete the post either. I told Nicholas this was a consequence of his decisions, of his family's decisions, and that if he really loved my daughter, then he should have fought for me from the beginning, should have told his parents to go to hell with their classism, and that his mother-in-law was going to be at that wedding whether they liked it or not. Like 3 more weeks passed, almost 2 months after my original post, when I found out through Facebook itself, because Lauren hadn't spoken to me, that she and Nicholas had gotten married. They eloped, literally. They went to a civil registry office and got married without telling anyone, without a ceremony, without a party, without anything. Just the two of them. And 2 witnesses they found on the street, according to what I learned later. And when Nicholas's father found out, because eventually everyone finds out about everything, he disowned him. Just like that, he told Nicholas that if he married my daughter without their permission, without a proper wedding that would save the family's reputation, then not to count on them anymore, that he wouldn't see a penny of the family inheritance, that basically he was dead to them. I didn't expect that, honestly. I never thought they'd go that far, though I should have imagined it considering how they were. I felt contradictory things, because on one hand I was still furious with all of them, but on the other hand I felt some pity for Nicholas, because in the end, he was also a victim of his horrible family. You know what I mean? And Lauren, my poor Lauren, was now married but without her mom and without her husband's family's support. Basically, the two of them alone, trying to start a life together in the middle of all this mess. And then, like a month ago, my apartment doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. I opened the door and there they were, Lauren and Nicholas, standing in my hallway looking like they'd cried all the way there. Lauren was wearing old jeans and a hoodie. Not the kind of expensive clothes she'd started wearing since she met Nicholas, but normal clothes, like what she used to wear when she lived with me. They stood there without saying anything for a moment, and then Lauren said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They sat on my couch, that same old couch where Lauren had told me I couldn't go to her wedding, and for the first time in months we really talked. Lauren cried and told me everything. How Nicholas's parents had pressured her from the beginning, how they'd told her I was going to embarrass them in front of their business partners, how they'd convinced her it was better for everyone if I wasn't there. She told me she'd been the biggest coward in the world, that she'd betrayed the only person who had always been there for her, that she had no excuse for what she'd done. Nicholas also apologized, told me he'd been weak, that he'd let his parents control his life for too long, that he should have defended Lauren and me from the beginning. He told me that when he first read my post, he was furious with me, but that later, when he started seeing all the comments, all the stories from other people his parents had mistreated, he started to see his family with different eyes, and that he finally understood his parents weren't the people he thought they were, that they were cruel and classist people who measured people's worth by their bank account. They told me they'd gotten married at the civil registry because they decided they didn't need anyone's approval, that the only thing that mattered was that they loved each other and wanted to be together, that Nicholas's father had disowned them, but they were okay with that Nicholas had gotten a job at another smaller agency, and Lauren was still working, that they were going to be fine without the family money. And that the only thing they wanted, the only thing they really needed, was for me to forgive them, to be part of their lives again. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't instantaneous. It wasn't like they asked for forgiveness. And I said yes, sure, everything's fine, and we hugged and happy ending. I sat there for a good while without saying anything, just looking at them, thinking about everything that had happened, about all the pain I'd felt, about the nights I spent crying, wondering if I'd been too harsh, if I should delete the post, if I was being selfish like Lauren had said. But also thinking about how they'd come to admit they were wrong, they'd sacrifice the money and comfort and Nicholas's family's approval to do the right thing. And that meant something, you know? I told them I needed time, that I couldn't just forgive them and pretend nothing had happened, but that I was willing to try, to rebuild what we had. Lauren threw herself to hug me and we cried together, and then Nicholas joined the hug too, and it was weird and emotional and bittersweet all at the same time. Now I see them like twice a week. They come for dinner or we go out to eat something cheap because none of us has much money, which is ironic considering everything we went through. Lauren tells me about her work, about how they're fixing up the small apartment they rented, about the plans they have for the future. Nicholas is attentive to me, tries to make up for the past by being extra considerate, and you can tell he's really trying. I don't know if things will ever be like before. Probably not, because something broke, and even if you glue it back together, the cracks will always be there. You know what I mean? But we're trying, and I guess that's what's important. The post is still on my Facebook. I haven't deleted it. Nicholas's parents' agency never fully recovered. They lost a lot of clients, and their reputation is on the floor, according to what Nicholas told me. He doesn't talk to his family anymore. They made it very clear they want nothing to do with him as long as he's married to Lauren. Sometimes I feel guilty about that, about having caused him to lose his family. But Lauren tells me I shouldn't, that they brought it on themselves, that actions have consequences. And she's right, I guess. Last week, Lauren asked me if someday we could have a small celebration, something intimate, just the three of us and some close friends, to celebrate their marriage for real. I told her yes, that I'd like that. And while we were planning, talking about where we could do it and what we'd eat, I felt something like peace. Like that feeling that despite all the mess, despite the pain and betrayal and scandal, in the end the important things fell into place. Because Lauren chose love over money, chose real family over in-laws, and chose to come back to me. I don't know if I did the right thing by posting that post. I still ask myself that today. It changed a lot of lives, destroyed a business, caused a huge scandal, separated Nicholas from his family. Sometimes I think I went too far, that I should have handled things more privately. But other times I think it was necessary, that family needed to be exposed, that they couldn't keep treating people like that and getting away with it, and that my daughter needed that wake-up call, needed to see what she was prioritizing and what she was willing to sacrifice. What I do know is that I'm not going to apologize for defending myself, for refusing to be treated as if I were less than others just because I don't have money. I spent too many years working hard, sacrificing, fighting, to let someone make me feel like I'm worth nothing. And if my story helped other people in similar situations feel validated, to know they don't have to accept being treated like that, then all the pain and drama was worth it. Lauren and Nicholas are coming for dinner tomorrow. I'm going to make lasagna, which has been her favorite dish since she was a kid. They're going to bring salad and bread, and we're going to sit at my small table in my small kitchen in my small apartment, and we're going to eat and laugh and try to be a family again. And that, after everything that happened, feels like enough.